let's just go ahead and get started. If you're just joining us now, take a few minutes and sign in by clicking on the attendee tab and putting X by your name so we know who's been attending each month. Please mute your microphone so that everyone is able to hear the webinar. Just a couple of reminders, if you go to our website, so utahprevention.org, there's lots of good information and resources available there. You can join one of our service committees, training, policy, advocacy committees. You can click on the link just there below on the agenda. We're always looking for people willing to help out in our areas. And also just our Facebook. We have our UPCA Facebook page, also the Research Cannabis Utah Facebook page. Lots of great information and things being posted there often. So if you'll continue to check those and post things on those to keep them active, that's great. Well, let's just go ahead and get started. We have a lot on the agenda today. We're pretty excited. This month's webinar is resources for capacity building. And we get a lot of questions about what are some of the resources available to coalitions? Where can I get funding for different programs and projects that my coalition is doing? How can I build capacity within my coalition? So we made a list of resources that we're aware of, and then we just asked some people to take some time, about 10 minutes or so, to talk about their program and how it can help build capacity within our coalitions here in the state. So our first person we're going to have to talk with us tonight, we're going to start off with Catherine Fife, and she's a principal consultant with Philanthropy Matters. Whew. So I'm just going to turn the time right over to Catherine.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Melissa. And yeah, Philanthropy Matters. And I just want to tell you guys, today is National Philanthropy Day. So what a great day to talk about resources, philanthropy being, resources that help advance the greater good. And so I think it's just really appropriate that you're having this webinar today for your monthly webinar. So congrats to all of you for the good work that you are doing, trying to improve our communities and to try to improve your philanthropic efforts, or your, gaining more resources to do the work that you do. So I'm just really quickly going to give you a couple basically breadcrumbs. And with that, hopefully the breadcrumbs, you can take a look and find some more information that will be helpful to you. Because as we all know, there's no magic bullet to getting money or getting funding for your coalition, for your projects. It takes a little bit of research, and hopefully I'll be able to lead you in a little bit of the right direction today. So when you're applying for funding, I just want to start off with just some basic considerations, things to keep in mind as you are applying for funding. First, before you go out and apply for funding, you need to come up with your case for support, or need to demonstrate your need. If you're not able to demonstrate that need through, citing research that has been done, through history, through data, or even an example anecdotally of what the need is in your community, for your coalition, for your projects, you're not going to get funding. So before you do anything, solidify that, make it sure it's strong. Show the impact that you've made as a coalition, as an organization, as a group in your community through data and story. A lot of people in the last 10 years, there was a shift. We used to talk about, we want to show stories, we want to connect people to our mission, we want to show what we're doing. And recently there's been a shift to showing more data, more, the actual impact, what you're doing, how you're moving the needle and numbers. But there needs to be a combination of the two. And I just want to make sure that people remember that there needs to be a balance between the numbers and the quantitative impact that you're making, and a story of the qualitative, the difference that you're making in people's lives, the long-term impact, specific stories that demonstrate the data and how you're making an impact through the coalition. So make sure, a lot of funders, as you're applying for funding, want to see the impact but they want to know how it impacts people in the community too. So don't forget the stories. Utilize partnerships. I think funders, as they're looking for coalitions or projects or organizations to fund, they want to make sure that they're not a silo in the community, that they're working with others. I think one of the things that we've come to know more and more today is that issues are complex. If you're looking at prevention, there are 4 different things. There are many different areas or issues that contribute to prevention. So it is important to not just think that you have all the answers, but to show how you utilize partnerships to create solutions to improve communities. And funders really like to see that. So as you're looking to apply for funding, make sure that you celebrate and showcase those partnerships throughout your applications. You need to brag about your unique approach. Doesn't mean it has to be, crazy and out there outside of the box, but just what makes you unique? How do you do things a little bit differently? What makes you stand out from other applications that they're going to be reading or considerations for funding? So it's really just important to think about that. And it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It can be simple, but just there's something that makes you unique, and you need to make sure that they know that. And then pay attention to criteria. So every funder, every application that you complete, or every funder that you request, every donor that you request funding from, has values, criteria, guidelines that they adhere to. So it's really, really important to make sure that you follow their guidelines, that you use their keywords, that you match the values that are in common between your project, coalition, and those of the funder, so that you can make sure to show a meaningful connection as you're applying for funds. Remember, it's about quality. What I always tell people when they're looking for funding opportunities is you have to make a fit. There are people who have resources that want to use them for good, whether it's an individual donor, a foundation, a company, but they want to have shared interests with those that they are funding. They want to make sure that they know that we're about the same things. So what are the commonalities? What are your shared interests? Is it family, education, youth, health? What are those things that are common both with those who are seeking the funding and those who are giving it? Are there opportunities to help each other? As a company, if it's a company that you're applying for funding from, do they want to involve their employees? Do you have a project, or can you provide an opportunity for employees to volunteer their time? A lot of companies, if they're going to fund you, they want to fund, but also they want to have a project that their employees can be involved in. And if that's something, look and see, is that a good fit? I don't think people should force fits. I also think you need to do a little bit of research to find, should I even apply for this? Or should I, apply for something else? You want to make sure your time is valuable. You want to make sure that you are investing your time in requesting funding that's hopefully going to be a good match. And then look at multiple issues. So if there are lots of companies, foundations that can support prevention activities, health activities, but what else is it? Is it youth? Are they in rural areas? Do they support rural areas? Is there a social enterprise aspect, meaning, is this a project that generates revenue on the side? Does it involve fitness, food? What are some of the additional issues in addition to the main key issue of prevention that you can make additional connections with your potential funders? So look for those, and as you're, just need to look, there's multiple layers, and the more layers you can connect with a potential funder, the better off you'll be. So here are some local family foundations that you should just check out. Maybe you are aware of these already. In fact, in Utah, we have only a handful of large foundations that provide funding. So these ones, these are a few that really look to provide funding for prevention activities. So here, just the George S. and Dolores Story Eccles Foundation. This is the largest foundation in the state. And you need to think about too how much funding you are going to need, and then also the process to request funding. So if you haven't applied for funding from the Eccles Foundation, it is an investment. It's great. I think it helps you look at your organization very detailed. So you can learn a lot about your organization along the way while you're applying. But this is a good resource, and if you haven't connected with these guys, you definitely should. Larry H. Miller Charities, the Lawrence T. and Janet T. D. Foundation, Sorensen Legacy Foundation, and Intermountain Healthcare. There's so much going on in the news. You guys know better than me about just, especially the opioid crisis. And Intermountain Healthcare, if you haven't seen, just recently announced some additional funding, $2 million funding, in addition to their funding to support community programs who are fighting opioid misuse. So if you haven't connected with Intermountain Healthcare or similar organizations who are associated with Intermountain Healthcare, which we may be learning more about in this call, definitely look at it, check it out. And there's some links to all of their websites. Here, there's information on how to connect with them, how to get more information, and then their funding their application process. Besides foundations, there are other potential funders. All areas throughout the state, CRA banks do support, especially if you have a coalition or a project organization in a rural area. You want to look at banks that are in your area who want to look if your project, if your coalition has a tie to economic development. And I know that sometimes that's not an immediate connection with, say, prevention exactly, but there's a lot of I think you need to make sure that you're not selling yourself short on connections to economic development and other factors. So if you brainstorm with someone and talk about, hey, does our coalition, does this project impact or affect economic development in certain areas? And if the answer is yes, then this could be a possibility for you. There are other companies that give. State Farm, there's their website, Walmart, community grants. They have other grants, but look in your community if you have not. But I wanted to show one thing. CVS, they do programs nationally, tobacco prevention. They have information on their website right now, though. You can't just apply. You have to. They only support organizations by invitation. But here's the thing, and this is the same with Verizon and a lot of other companies. They have contacts. They have a person that you need to reach out to say, hey, this is what we're doing in our community. This is the work that we're doing in the area of tobacco prevention or other prevention activities. And we want to know, do we align with your giving program? The best way, I think, to get funding for your projects, for your coalitions, is to make connections, build relationships, and make sure people are aware of the work that you're doing. So if you make a connection with the giving person at CVS, which is listed on their website, or Verizon, they might not be able to fund you, but they also might have connections with others who do. The other thing is, if they do have an opportunity for funding and they know about your project, they'll invite you. They're not going to invite you if they don't know about you. So work on building relationships, spreading the word, sharing the good work that you're doing through all sorts of ways, and building relationships with people who have resources that could benefit your coalition, your organization in the future. Remember, there's also possibilities with vendors. Anybody you give money to, any corporations that are working in your issue area or your field, can all be potential funders. So make sure you're not overlooking organizations, companies, people that you can apply for that are really close and you have relationships with already. Maybe you don't have a relationship with the community giving person, but you have a relationship with the accounts receivable or payable, and they can connect you with their giving person. So there's all sorts of opportunities. Places to get ideas. So a lot of people say, how do you know about grants that are available? The big national place to find grants is foundationcenter.org. If you are located in Salt Lake City, you have free access to this database that is online. You can access it through the Salt Lake City Library at those branches listed there on the slide. At one of the local, at the Glendale Library, they're offering a free training on November 21st on how to navigate and how to look for grants using foundationcenter.org. So if you're in the area, if you can get to that, I would definitely encourage you to do so. A lot of places do have, you can do searches, and of course, you know, nothing beats a Google search, but you can also go down a black hole. These are very focused. You can search by, you know, dates, criteria, size. There's all sorts of really sophisticated searches, but there is oftentimes a subscription associated with it. So you want to make sure that you are able to, if you can pay for this subscription, great. If not, utilize free resources like foundationcenter.org at the Salt Lake Library. And then just one last thing, I want to make sure that you leverage every opportunity that you can. You know, just look for possible opportunities for letting people know about the work that you're doing. And coming up, Giving Tuesday is a great potential just way to leverage or way to get it out there, you know, to your supporters, to people that you know. It's an opportunity for people to give. This is the end of the year. People are thinking about giving. So at the very least, make sure you're out there. Make sure that you can, you create a platform in which people can support you if they are so inclined. I just don't want, you know, you don't have to put a ton of energy into it, but just make sure that you know that a lot of people are going to be talking about giving on November 28th. So you want to make sure that you're in that space. You want to make it easy for people to give to you, easy for people to find you, easy for people to learn about you. You know, share your message, shout it from the rooftops, share it with everyone through social media and other, and make sure you have that really strong case of support as you're applying for funding. You know, I know our time is really short and I went through that super fast. I know you have a lot to cover here in your webinar, but we'll have these slides available so you can click on any of these links. And then, of course, you know, hopefully these will be a starting point for you to look for funding opportunities and then continue your search from there. But if you have any questions, here's my contact information. You feel free to reach out to me, and I think we'll be having time for questions later on in this webinar, as well as I look forward to hearing from you on the resources that you all have, because there's always more resources to learn about. Lots of people wanting to support great projects in the community. And so yeah, it's great that we're here sharing with each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. That was great. Did anybody have any questions for Catherine right now? All right, let's move on to the next one. Thanks so much, Catherine. That was great. And I liked how you mentioned showing the considerations for applying for funding. That's really important. It's such an important part of writing for grants, and the criteria, like know who is funding it and what are they looking for, and demonstrating the need in your community and how it's going to help your community, impact your community, and making sure that it fits with what you're doing. Any more that I'm learning is it's not about chasing the money, it's about what's going to fit within your action plan that you already have within your coalition and your community, and what is your data showing. And so those are great things. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. Let's move on to our next presenter, Laura Roethlisberger. Sorry, I probably butchered that name. I apologize. She's the program officer for Volunteers in Service to America, so VISTA. So I'm just going to turn the time over to you, Laura.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Can everyone hear me? Is there some feedback?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I am really looking forward to talking about AmeriCorps Vista as a capacity building resource. I think a lot of what Catherine was sharing can fit in with what I want to share with you today, but about a more specific program. So really quickly, today I want to give you a brief overview of national service, talk about AmeriCorps Vista, and then how to develop a project. And the main objective is to have you all think about if Vista could support your work, and potentially those action plans that you have. So the Corporation for National and Community Service, we're a federal agency, and our mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through service and volunteering. We have 3 different AmeriCorps programs and 3 Senior Corps programs, and I'm going to be focused on VISTA today, but there's ways that these other AmeriCorps programs could support your work, and also Senior Corps programs. So if you're interested in learning more about these other programs, I would be happy to share that information. We also work with Youth Serve Utah. They're the state agency that receives the federal funding to administer the AmeriCorps programs in the state. So an overview about VISTA. VISTA stands for Volunteers in Service to America, and it is a program that provides full-time VISTA members that support projects that fight poverty in the United States. So typically these projects last for 3 years. There's an application process to have a VISTA project, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So this question of who can sponsor a VISTA project. Nonprofit organizations can sponsor the project, or government agencies. And oftentimes we also have nonprofits work with government agencies and vice versa. And so, depending on whether or not your coalition could apply, or if you're working with a substance abuse prevention department or health department or another 501c3 partner that you may have in the community, there's possibilities for different ways that you could either apply directly or be a part of a VISTA application. Every year, VISTA comes out with their guidance for the year. And the guidance is a really valuable document to get both an understanding of VISTA and also to know if there's a fit. And so, making sure that there's that connection between what the need is that you have and what AmeriCorps VISTA can provide as a resource. So I'll go over our 4 core principles, and then also what our programming priorities are really quickly. So VISTA was developed during the War on Poverty. We have an anti-poverty focus for all of our programming. Community empowerment is our next principle. And as I have learned more about the strategic prevention framework that you all use, I think this really fits in with the cultural competence guiding principles. So Catherine talked about matching values. I'm going to give you some of the hints that I see for where there are some matching values with your work and with VISTA. Capacity building. VISTA members are a capacity building resource. They're there to build systems and expand partnerships and secure resources, and that connects with sustainable solutions, because as I mentioned, a VISTA project is typically 3 years, but what they've developed during that 3 years is meant to outlast their term of service. And so, so there really is this focus on capacity building leading towards sustainability. So VISTA members aren't doing direct service, but they are doing really valuable work to create something that that can be valuable, and in your case, in this prevention field. So our programming priorities, there's 4 of them. First, Healthy Futures, which directly ties in with opioid addiction prevention and recovery. This is one that's been a focus for us the past 2 years. It's one of the main reasons that Leanne invited me to come and speak with you all today, because of the prevention work that you're all doing, and specifically thinking about opioids. And so then that also can kind of tie in with the K-12 success area within education. I know that many of you from my brief research do a lot to sort of minimize risk factors in that area so that you're able to really stymie any issues whilst people are in middle and high school. So a couple more things about opioid addiction and how it ties in with VISTA. So we know that not everyone with this affected by this epidemic are living in poverty, but we also see that low-income individuals are more vulnerable to substance abuse. So that's why we see that there's this really strong connection to VISTA. And then in addition, VISTA is a nimble community resource. Yes, it's a federal program, but it's meant to work at a grassroots level, similar to how your coalitions are really responding to what's happening at the local level. And so that's why VISTA, in my mind, and also on a national scale, why we're really seeing that it could be a valuable resource in this space. There's a website that goes into more detail about how VISTA resources can support opioid programming. Just a few examples in this space, specifically in Massachusetts, there's a VISTA who is a task force facilitation VISTA with the United Way. So really trying to find out what the community need is, develop partnerships, develop programming materials. In Georgia, a VISTA is raising funds, coordinating a volunteer program, and designing a social media campaign. And so there's many different things that VISTA members could be doing. Very quickly, a VISTA project is developed by first identifying a community need, then submitting an application. One of the things that's kind of nice with this application process is that our office would work with you on developing the project, and we are here as a local resource here in Salt Lake to work with potential applicants and kind of have those conversations and explain what can be a different kind of grant program. I mean, we're giving people, not funding, and so there's a lot to consider with that. Here are some of the things that VISTA members do, just broad examples in terms of making the community aware, developing financial resources, outreach, evaluation, technology, volunteer recruitment. We've talked about some of those, but there's a lot of different things that VISTA members can do to support your efforts. Another thing I want to share is that there's kind of two different ways that an organization can receive VISTA members. One is by applying directly as a individual organization for a VISTA project, so the single site model. The other is to work with an intermediary or develop an intermediary project where there's one applicant, but there are many sites. So these are 7 intermediary projects in Utah, and it might be possible to connect you with one of these projects if you're looking for just 1 or 2 VISTA members, or to think about a larger partnership in this area. And finally, this is our contact information. I also feel like I had to go pretty quickly, but there's 3 of us in the Utah State Office of CNCS. We have a program director, and then who is Jake Murakami, and then 2 program officers, and we are located here in Salt Lake. So we are always happy to talk with people who are interested in national service, talk about how to apply for a VISTA project. It's possible to submit applications kind of at any time. Right now we're looking at getting applications as well, so it would be a good time to talk with us, but we accept applications on a rolling basis. And if you want to contact our whole office, you could just email ut@cns.gov. So I am also happy to take questions now or wait until the end.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. Did anybody have any questions they wanted to ask Laura right away? Well, thanks, Laura. Building sustainability is such an important part of our coalition work, and Vista sounds like a great opportunity to expand that partnership and that resource to help with that process. And it seems like Vista's a great resource, like you said, for giving people. And we know that coalitions need a lot of those worker bees and people to get things done within the coalition. So we appreciate you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's move on to our next presenter, Kim Gardner, and he's the program manager for National Alliance on Mental Illness, so NAMI. Kim, are you there?
He may not be on yet, Melissa. He was in another meeting and he was going to step out. I'm not sure if he's on yet.
Okay.
Maybe we could just move into some of the other ones and we can come back to him if he joins.
Yeah, let's do that. Actually, you're next on the agenda, talking about the intern programs that we have at Southwest and how those help our coalition work.
Okay,
Do you want to take the time and start on that?
Yeah, I'll just talk about those briefly. This was one that when we were making our list of different opportunities that we knew of resources that might be available to people, somebody asked if I would take just a minute and talk a little bit about our intern program. And this is something that I think is available to a lot of the coalitions and prevention workers in the state that are in communities where you have a university or a college. So it's been a great resource because in a lot of ways, it doesn't cost us anything, but we get services from students who are looking for opportunities to get some experience in the field or to work in the community and kind of see how community change occurs. And so we reached out to our local universities and created a little intern program. We have a number of different kinds of internships. One of them, for example, is just simply working with a coalition. So for one semester, a student is involved with a coalition. They have to pick one project that the coalition's working on and then help to carry that out, which is great because all of a sudden you get somebody who's new and excited about this. They have some time and they're willing to donate some efforts to help you carry out a project. And in some cases, we've had students that need to get a full year internship, and they have to complete anywhere between 40 to 100 hours spent on that internship. And so we get them for a full year to work on and serve with the coalition. And it's been really great because, like I said, it doesn't cost us anything, but we get somebody who's really excited and wants to be involved. We've even had them working on specific projects, like we had an intern student who helped us with some of our prevention take-back days, and they helped us get in touch with the pharmacy tech program at the university, and so we ended up getting a lot of the pharmacy techs that came and helped with the take-back event. And so it was a really great program. It was really easy to get set up. We just went over and talked to some of the departments on campus that we thought might be related to this. We have one of the internship programs that we created is for the Prevention Dimensions program. So we get students who are in a humanities discipline or they're doing early childhood education, and we get them to go into the schools and actually implement Prevention Dimensions lessons in the classrooms. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities that can be explored there, and it's pretty easy. It's just a matter of going in, making contact with some of the departments that might relate to this field, like psychology, sociology, criminal justice, education, and working with them to get interns referred to you. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but that's one of the things that we've done with our intern program.
Great, thanks.
Looks like.
Did anybody have any questions? Oh, great. Thanks, Logan. That's such a great way to get people on board. You know, kids that have that drive and that interest, it's something that they're wanting to do in their future, and it helps get new ideas, and they're young and excited and they have that different connection and they have that time and time is such a valuable thing, and they're willing to put forth that effort. And so I think an intern program is a great thing to have on a coalition. So thanks for that, Logan. Let's move on to Kim then. Kim, are you ready to roll?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes, thanks for joining us today. I know you're busy.
No, of course. I'm grateful for the opportunity. So somebody's going to advance my slides for me. I was asked as part of this webinar today to discuss briefly about the NAMI Utah Prevention by Design program. So if you'll advance to the next slide. Prevention by Design is a program that NAMI has with the state of Utah to do suicide prevention and mental health promotion and mental illness prevention. So this slide captures in one model what prevention by design is really all about, and that is a comprehensive approach to prevention and mental health promotion, and with all of those elements that are part of that. And so if you will advance to the next slide. NAMI Prevention by Design is a grant funding program and technical assistance program for local coalitions and local networks. And maybe when we end this portion, or my speaking, Melissa, you and others might share your involvement with Prevention by Design and how that grant funding has improved communities and been part of what coalition work is in your area. But this next grant cycle for Prevention by Design, or for coalition work, I should say, for this effort will be a 5-year contract this time instead of a 3-year contract. And I'm talking between whoever is awarded the RFP for coalition work versus what money is actually funded to local coalitions. And that will go out and we'll see who gets that contract. But in any case, the RFP for local money will be released in the early spring of 2018 on a statewide basis to coalitions and networks. There will be an RFP that local coalitions will actually respond to, and the contracts that will go out could be a series of 1-year contracts, or they may be longer. There's discussions about whether or not it's helpful for coalitions not to have to apply every year, as opposed to less frequently, every 2 or 3 years or something like that. So those discussions will be ongoing. But part of the RFP includes a proposal with logic model and budget, with using the public health risk and protective models to determine what local coalition needs can best be met, what the risk and protective factors are for suicide and for mental illness, and how mental health promotion can be a part of that. There's a committee that will review proposals, and award notices will be made in the spring of 2018 with funding available beginning July 1st, again, perhaps for 1 year, but depending on how the RFP actually looks, perhaps for longer than that, maybe up to as much as 3 years. For example, this year, this contract year with coalitions, fiscal year 17, there were grants awarded up to $15,000 per year, and it has become more competitive over time. For example, this year we were oversubscribed, if you will, and could not provide grant funding for all the applications that were made. And so it's really important to write the best grant proposal that you can, and identify how this money might benefit your communities. Will you advance to the next slide, Melissa? So in potential strategies for use of Prevention by Design money can include all of these kinds of things. Community assessments to assess where communities are in terms of suicide prevention and mental health promotion. Various kinds of campaigns have been funded on a local level by coalitions, including Is Your Safety On, Man Therapy, local media, advertising or promotional kinds of things in theaters and that sort of thing. Then there are numerous trainings that can be supported by Prevention by Design funding, mental health first aid, QPR, etc. And school-based programs, we have a number of folks this year who are utilizing Prevention by Design funding for Hope Squads and NAMI Utah's in-school curriculum called Hope for Tomorrow. Funding can be utilized for coalition support and including staff time. Our funding cannot fund a position, but can help in reimbursement because ours is a reimbursement contract. Expenses are incurred, and invoices are sent to NAMI, and then we reimburse those expenses, and that can and does include staff time for people to do prevention work with this focus. So I don't think there was another slide. Is there, Melissa? I can't. Of mine?
No, there's not. That's it, Kim.
Okay. So Melissa or others, I would be interested in having you share if you're comfortable. And also we can open up for questions, but also share what folks who are on the call and on the webinar, what their experience has been with and how they've used funding and what it's looked like for them.
Well, for me, I just was sitting here as you're talking. I mean, can't even explain how much this grant, even it's a small amount of money compared to some of the grants out there, but it has helped our community so much. It's really being from a small community, we've had to think outside of the box of we don't have a ton of resources in suicide prevention. And it's definitely one of those taboo subjects that nobody wants to talk about. And so we've really had to, like I said, think outside the box and find different avenues to use this grant money. But it's been great, and we've been able to bring awareness to people in our community. It's helped us build some amazing partnerships with our church groups and different businesses, and even helped a lot with building partnerships within our school. We now have Hope Squads in our schools, where that's been something that we haven't been able to do. We've been doing QPR classes in all of our church groups in our community, and it's expanding outside of our community that they're requesting us to come do QPR. We were able to train over 600 people in our area just last year alone in QPR, and we're a small community, and so that's a big number. And so I was actually just telling Kim at the Suicide Prevention Conference, thanks for the opportunity for these grants. We go to these conferences and we learn things, but then what do we do? How do we put what we learned into our community? And so having these grants helps us be able to take what we've learned and put it into our community in a way that fits our community, our small community or the large community, wherever you're from. And so we've done some really good things. Our biggest thing has been the QPR, just taking it to businesses, offering them lunch, and the businesses will pay for their employees to be there during their staff time. We've done church groups, that's our biggest project, I guess, has been the QPR and media campaigns, right, and things like that. So I always appreciate the opportunity for these grants to be able to do those things in our community. And it has helped bring down that stigma and that awareness. And I always have people talking to me about their experiences from things that we've taught them. And so you can tell it's making a difference in our community. So.
Well, thank you. And we believe that our NAMI staff is always there to help with technical assistance and engaging local coalition work. We try to hold 3 or 4 webinars ourselves for our contracts and discuss pertinent and relevant and useful kinds of things, but we are always available. So it's a little different model than what might be typical for a grantor-grantee kind of a relationship where people give funding and then you get periodic reports. It's much more collaborative and a team concept. And I think it's working. I think it's pretty successful. So I'd be interested if you have questions. I don't know exactly who's on the call, but I would be happy to field any questions.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Kim? Anybody else want to share maybe what they're doing in their community with their NAMI Prevention by Design grant? All right, let's just finish up. I think we wanted Rob just to share maybe a little bit about the Parents Empowered grants and maybe some of the town hall money that's available. Are you on the call, Rob?
I am here.
Perfect, it's your show.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so really quickly, I just wanted to make sure that communities are aware that this year, so this upcoming spring, we are back on the town hall stipend money from the Stop Alcohol Abuse partnership at the federal level. So what that is every 2 years, they offer a $500 stipend for communities to do town hall events around stopping underage drinking. And in the past, those have been somewhat coordinated by Amy Franson at the State Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. However, you as a community can sign up for those independent of the state. It's just been kind of nice to have someone else coordinate and do all the paperwork and stuff for it. But essentially, information will be coming out about the town hall events probably, I think towards the end of January is when they release the information on how to obtain one of those stipends. And the goal then is for an April or May event for your community. And if you've participated in those in the past, they've been pretty cool, and you've been able to kind of pull together various sectors of the community to talk about underage drinking. I know a lot of communities and coalitions have used it as an opportunity to introduce Parents Empowered and, kind of have parent nights. Some events have been super big. Some events have been smaller in numbers, but in getting those small numbers together, I know that there's been several communities that have actually gotten some people in the door that hadn't been involved, that needed to be involved in underage drinking prevention in their communities, and they were able to share information. So they're pretty cool. Again, look for information coming out on towards the end of January on how to receive that $500 stipend. The next thing to talk about really quickly is many of you are familiar with the Parents Empowered mini grants, and that's something that's been operating for a couple of cycles now. And we've learned a lot from those cycles and are changing up a little bit of some of the way that we are rolling out the Parents Empowered mini grants. One of the first maybe changes, or maybe just kind of a re-emphasis on the partnership that the local substance abuse authority areas should have with community coalitions in their areas, is the fact that there will be on the 7th of December a training primarily for the LSAA coordinators or the prevention coordinators from around the state, in which the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health will be training along with R&R partners how to apply for the Parents Empowered mini grant. And the idea then is that the LSAA prevention coordinators will take this back to their counties and areas and work with community coalitions in putting together proposals. Some of the other changes will be of kind of a re-emphasizing and a restructuring on the projects so that they really are sustainable in your communities. And there'll be kind of a couple of different levels in which we'll do that. One will be for communities that may have not come on board yet as a full coalition, but could use this sort of a kickstart for community mobilization. The next level would be for those community coalitions that have already either been a recipient of Parents Empowered mini grants or are in a place where they can house a structure of what would be kind of a bigger and better, new, improved way to use and utilize the funding and the services of R&R Partners for a Parents Empowered effort in their community, all the while kind of making sure that the things that they will propose are sustainable and not just a kind of a one-time community event, but they're actually part of a strategic plan for reducing underage drinking in your communities. For the purpose of many of the folks on this call, that information will come from the local area authority prevention managers, and more information will be coming out from the state on that training specifically, and it's tied to the prevention coordinators meeting on the 6th. So more information will shortly be coming on that. And I think that can kind of be it, unless there's specific questions to that, in which my response will probably be, I don't know.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
We've done some really great things with both those, town hall money and Parents Empowered money. And I actually have other communities ask, you guys are doing some great things, like how do I get involved with that? And so we've been able to help them, get town hall money and help them do town halls in their communities, just outside of our communities. So some great opportunities. I did want to point out really quick that there was a question in the comments for Laura. A question for Laura: can interns from social workers or other fields be used as VISTA workers? And Laura answered the question in the comments. The organization gets to decide who to recruit as a VISTA member. So someone studying social work may be a good fit. They would just have to be able to do a full-time VISTA service and manage their studies. So that was a good question for that. I just wanted to take a few minutes and show just another opportunity. Our coalition has received this Select Health grant. It's Select 25. I've also written others in the community. I think our community as a whole has received about 3 to 5 that I've helped get the Select Health grant. So if you actually go to the selecthealth.org, and then if you go to, about us and in the community, and then it talks a little bit about these grants. So scroll down to the Select 25, and then you can click on these different tabs. So learn more about the Select 25. And the grant is helping others who help others. And it's a great fit for coalitions. I mean, we have the partnerships already. We're doing healthy things in the community. And it's assisting individuals with needs and safe environment, building stronger communities. So it's a perfect fit for coalitions. It's an award for $2,500. And we were able to do some great things with this money before we were able to get our DFC. So right here it tells in the what are the qualifications for this grant. So promoting health and wellness, assists individuals with special needs, creating safe environments, building strong communities, and support the underserved. So they give 12 of these grants out. It's a donation, so you have to have an organization for them to make the check to. You can actually apply here, but the application doesn't come out until January. If you actually go back to this right here, the Select Health Facts, it has a lot of the frequently asked questions about the grant. Actually, you can see here, this is Panguitch. This was we just had started a girls softball team in our school. It was the first time ever in our school. So I helped write that grant, and you can actually see right there. They used that money for safety equipment and things like that for their program. So this just tells how I can apply, what are the restrictions, things like that. If you scroll down, it's just kind of self-explanatory. It's pretty simple application. So here's where you would complete and submit the application, but it's not there yet because it doesn't come out till about January, but they're due February 20th next of 2018. So it's just a great opportunity if you have a little project that you need, or just a small coalition that needs a little bit of funding for something. It's a really great opportunity. They give out 3 per, they have the state divided into 4 different areas, and they give 3 per area, plus they give 13 out that are just at random. So that's just a really good opportunity. Did anybody have any questions about that or anything else that we have on our from our webinar today? Did anybody want to share maybe something that they've been doing with their community about capacity building resources, anything like that? Anybody like to share before we close today? Everybody's so quiet and actually muted. I don't even realize everybody's still on. So good job. I just wanted to close and say thanks for joining our webinar. Our next webinar will be December 20th. It is the recognizing and showing appreciation to coalition members and community partners. So the gift of appreciation, and that's a really important thing, is we're always using people for help. How can we thank them and show our appreciation to them? And so that will be a really good webinar. If you'll mark that on your calendars today, and make sure you're marking your calendars for the 3rd Wednesday every month of next year for our webinars. Also, if you missed part of this or want to view it again for the slides, you can actually go, this webinar is recorded, and you can go to the utahprevention.org website, and you can go back and review the presentation. The slides and comments and everything will be available then, so you can do that. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month on the 20th. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Melissa.